대단하로 시좀 집어진 코라기산 이게 또 대진신 좀배 소자산의 민도 다 빌리 좀배 묵산의 민도 결이 인지민지 당아자의 미기피미기 또 장치를 레디고배 대 공연사 진료여 가진 대콜로 대 나폴레진지다 시디기 인텔레기 동도베 디수 임베 디멤버지 혼균돌로 탑실사림이
나라미 기르기 섬차르다 데 레큐르즘 집에 와진 데 로십삼시 디스 또 비마초베디 데 조마다세 슈돌라.
If we strictly go by the feeding directive or rather the non-feeding directive, in principle I do not agree with that.
아니 장치술로 또 진이타까지 맞듭지디 민노스 노멜라.
So I don't really understand why government wants to find all people who are feeding stray animals. So through my experience, learning and research, I found that by not feeding them, it will only create more problems than solutions.
I think my first reaction was really of anger and also indignation and how dare they. But I know that everybody is in the position, everyone who was behind this decision making definitely put some thought into this. Maybe the way of doing things may be different.
I very respectfully disagree with the government's decision to find people who feed stray dogs.
샘찔레단 최진기게 합배 찔레진데니 마투심제 도서잡세베데 최진게 합배 아니 되어 대아치니다지 도매냠는데 내음했습니다.
배보다니 저 자탑 디우마두디 같이 좀 줄로 지자되게 배팀돼서 가데베 점치거데 당아자기 쇼니 미세쇼니 아니베보다 가자기 쌈 아니베 샘철로 가자기 아니베 샤디기 배 떠우달로디 대 안에디디 대남의 삶이 마투 좀 집에 톰베 세쇼니라
Chirtan Zambuli Nalura, Tidanama Semchingi Rawangse, Animal Rights, Kabirura, Ranlu, Sora Yubzumbe, Semchin Pahom Disude, Sora Yu, Disugi Dazi, Tapo Semi, Nosatanta di Darshab Judu, Hakpardu, Nashira Gehapsum Chibawachin, Namba Chudingi Gehap, Di Nandunile, Tiningjisu or Tembi, Tepa Chembigi Choda Sachime.
If you don't feed them, they will obviously, become hungry and they will try to go look for food. So when they try to go look for food, they will try to go beyond their territory, existing territories. When they go beyond their existing territories, then where the problem creates. So it's a problem, where people won't like it and they meet up with those animals again, like different kinds of animals. And this all kind of chaotic happens and it only creates this kind of, so many problems, right?
I won't count myself as one of the most passionate. So imagine even I am enraged by this rule. So I think a lot of people are feeling a little unsettled about this rule because, like I said, it's counterintuitive.
If we don't feed, it is very clear that the dogs are going to starve. Because going strictly by the definition, it says you cannot feed here, you cannot feed there, you cannot feed there, and basically all areas are covered, but in directly it doesn't say you can't feed. Then they could start biting more.
What will humans do? We've seen incidences of plane crashes and people surviving by eating the people who have died, and this is people with rational faculties. We can rationalize and say this is not what a normal human being does. And do you think animals have that faculty?
아니베 탑시다 탑람디 피주베 미저가세 다치 슈도좀베 땡아자라 미시 초와 정한도 미절로 닌카 따로 닐레 bom벨라.
And we can't have the tragic incident of dogs eating another young child just because they're unprotected, right? And it's not like they are naturally like that. We are driving them to that point.
Actually, I'm also part of feeding a huge number of free-roaming dogs in my own surrounding because I feel because when I don't feed them, then they become more aggressive. I found it.
Jingachara Roshiti Zulu, Tejigu Machuma Jadabachin, Tedelengachara, Tatunque, Tessimtegi, Roshiti Zogi, Nobaleshara Chundi Dula, Tani Zumbe, Tedele Nova, Bombera Jamnikin and Kayu, Miditu Sanigin and Kayu, Aludito Lobdana Umdalunis, Sotam Sanigin and Kadu, Tet Macharagi, Gonorgi, Simche Shachap, Galapatamdalu, Teto Swidi Sanigin and Kadu, Tanibe.
Telo Paura Dama, Telo Pau Dama, Telo Santa Nieve, Temavatan.
Macera Tadito, Ya Parida and Zonolaparu, Kajulo, Mami Gizum Jadapta, Penolana, Mutangana Suchi, Moshla, no Tada Simchaka, no Betonjabachi. Anna Tushaptalu, Jihud Tomato will attach Juma Besa Umela.
Then there's a danger that they will be classified as feral. And being classified as feral will most likely result in euthanasia.
So
to have someone say that the very act of even feeding an extended family member food is against the law is, to me, it just seems like it's a value that I would not want to pass down to my children. And even for people like me and even people younger than me who have these very close connection with the animals around them, I feel like it could have to a certain extent even mental health. It could trigger mental health issues in younger people who are kind of sensitive to these issues.
And I think to be told that feeding an animal is a crime, I didn't think I would live to see this day.
Yeah, in rural areas, we do grow up, there is no concept of pets, but we do grow up with animals around us to the point that we even humanize them by giving them names. So to have rules like that says like, hey, you cannot feed them, and then to have the government breathing down your neck to even see if these activities are carrying on can have such an adverse effect on people's mental well-being too, I feel, because we are connected with the surroundings that we live in.
Yugo disunalo bewachin te rochi disu dazi bemi semi chokpa loksu chuchu bemi te ane beodalu rochi chamsi jinda memi disu yukhagi mi disu gi te tol hanjuri jindigi maswa thabrami te ta betsuwa chindi shada shule to jimbagi madwa te rana sagi rochi di dazi bebe rangi gonor semchi zumbera rochi chamsi duse dazi thabachin te ngachi midelu dilute mi nebadi mafapchap chu snomela.
To maybe like we can set up an NGO in the rural areas too that will provide some jobs to our youth as well, you know, like animal lovers like us. We're willing to do it actually. So I think there's so many ways we can do it, but only thing is it takes time to implement and it takes time to think.
While we understand the government's compulsions that we cannot have 10 dog shelters and the cost of funds allowed, we understand that also because to have the infrastructure for a dog shelter, it is we know the amount of hassle and the amount of money involved. So the next best thing is to allow the feeding with protocols.
The Janchi Sudal Janchi Mipkara Domda watching the Janchi Tonta Kebe Tungsishuni, the Anime Bebo, the Janchi Tonta Kebe Kara Dom, the Sogosi, the Lujutali Showmen, that the Kadirabero, Kudirabero, that the Rochi, Ririnini, the Milu never came on Gaimishi, Ririnini Gingachara, the Gono Simchelu never came on Gaimishi, the Anizumbe Mishachap Tikala, Kara Tengachara, Shipselbe, the Shipselbe Shimdabe, Dutik Be, the Gibe Sanya Sagochi Zubebe, the Analo Jatub Dojubabachin. The Jungi Beru Mangi Thomas will be Dunkotale, Mihi Musin Omela Roshik, Yoteji Menendige.
The Tim the Mapati Junge, na Semche Jangsi Ma, Mashogira Danzima Be, and Jansam de Tele Milusota Pane Benedigi Teta, Chicanin Digi, Jamnovala, Teteva, Te Catilo Rana Sesagona, that's a tato Chimiludi, Namasamchi, Pine Cake of Chiminus and Nomela.
That's when you ngachagi rochida dewi te chala de te shubera na de yesi shunila tangachara gonurda te desopki khatule matutu pera te japjona nam shindu be ngachagi yugo no kinala fa te ka tata tsagendi be te rochip changchi thezin de mapop ka te tata chaptera yesi shuni tanile fa bo te tim juju juti be te ta rochidi to te kara jigo mapji ma jani sudalu te jigo mapji ma jisim cha kai shi juni ni ka
ngachara ga berura simchi makimi the Kim Machuba, Kanidi, Kache, the Simchi, Luchi Toshimdale, the Gabirura, Machira, Chanyam, Dewa Deba Jordatep, Tungel Madub Jordatebi.
So I feel like if at all the government is genuinely worried about the stray population, what they need to do is sterilize these dogs, not just have short campaigns of a few months or weeks, but it should be an annual thing where they can sterilize every stray and then the public could help with the sterilization too.
Dans the Tasso Noajin, the Shacho Disobey, Mapangalagi Roch, Nagi Tochimisu de Kara Shacho Be Jaila.
And for me, whenever I see stray dogs which are not sterilized, which are not with notch ears, I always take it to the animal shelter or veterinary hospital for the sterilization to help government, right? In that way, I catch them in a human way. You don't necessarily have to tranquilize them and traumatize them in that way.
And not only that, I mean, why should we only look at coexistence with wildlife, right? Now we're not even calling it conflict with wildlife. The terminology has changed to call it coexistence with wildlife, okay, peaceful coexistence. So if you're making all of the effort to do it with wildlife, why can't we do it with man's best friend, right?
I think we are we have fulfilled 80 to 90% of what was set out to do, the sterilization program. So now it's only a question of that 10 to 20% accommodating everybody's concerns.
Kachimo swaji nilepa ta rochigi tserin shura rochilu logu dechime. Rochigi tsedi. Ta ane beudalo rochi kara yopchi ta tuchi shachu be kapsulera rochi kara maachi shuchi yopchi lot dunda gyagol pha jujugi rochi sangsa ungula. Te lot ni da sumge tinlo rochi danzi beni chila. Danzi benegi ne kapta thapshe thaplamchi dibachin. Kachimo swaji todi phena phenggo se shunila.
Ngasi minabi chetamle jimbatan kilutan kiki tsamizase ter da no semchi jenbeachin sachi zadi dene du te rochi tega hibda to mabjimbachin to kedi kauchin nichirai.
And in general, we human beings have domesticated dogs to such an extent that they have no choice but to depend on human settlements for their survival. They just have no other choice. It's not like other wild animals where they can just fend for themselves. They just need human beings because they scavenge our leftovers.
I remember this one time, the Prime Minister in his speech on National Day had talked about how everybody should adopt a stray dog or two, right? And this would be the best gift to His Majesty the King. And I tweeted and it went viral. All of the Indian media picked up. I got so many followers because of that. And they were like, wow, Bhutan is amazing. Imagine the leader of the country asking people to adopt strays, right?
Some of these dogs are very old. They've almost lived close to a decade near our house. They are, like I said, part of our family members, and to have them uprooted and put them into shelters can have such traumatic mental health issues, I feel.
And I think when you're making these rules, we're looking at it from a very we're not really looking at the kind of impact it will have. We're only looking at the immediate impact, which is, oh, you know, we want to decrease interaction among dogs, or maybe they will disappear. I think that is the point, right? Or it's controlled the dog population. But we aren't thinking about how does that impact the previous relationship between humans and animals, humans and dogs, right?
Nibe tabe bewajin de rochida de zodi ta mappa phydo chira mebe tsame yasure ati meto bungse nomela tanidi ta gajimo sawajin ngachara aji dasim chira bele wa e tamen ngachara penalo achu donkamu ani red panda selame ta achu donkadi nyamsha shu ni bedese ni tsami ju ni bedese dibe forest so kate susu nani dela te rochizo ani zumbe jugdo chu be bachin digi ni khaji thongse nomela ni kadebe shipsil bedo ga ngacha shu
The pe ngalagi na zum chi ba chin rochi mapale ata rochi mi ba chin ngacha sim duso simla nyaka do bala mi tap top duso omela ani rochi khalkha ko rochi che mi te nam au kuina au duso nam omina mashi au sono la ko khani sumchi
마치 다 너무 배로 니마 배로 너무 같이 니로 시소좀배대로 공이 같이 오로 쳐라 같이 심정으로 명으로 쳐 대니마한테 안 가지고 한 심정으로 같이 오로 공하고 냥 뭐하려 같이 미리 쳐 제가 저것도 더 가르치나 되선 같이 미실라 매아 지나 오로 같이 미소 단지 합지 대티 공이나 공을 겪고 소소라이라 같이 오로 실라 심정
때들에 심제디 휴바진 휴비기 깨지라 잡요라 혼데 타린 살에 온도와 지 온도기 공께 아지 최소주의 잡정라 제나 볼로카라 휴비고래 된가 제 미치나 볼로카 두베베 로시 슈베 합도 좀 합네 다 아니 값으로 가자 팀이 때께 잡다베 와진 때 심제디 나가 지기 깨워는 쉽지 로아요라 다 아니 좀 디펜바요라
From what I know, I'm not sure how far this is true, but from what I know, the reason the government is doing this is obviously in the bigger picture to have a safe and noise-free luxury tourism for the country and to boost its economy. But I feel like, from my experience in the tourism industry, the tourists actually like the fact that we coexist with the animals. They just love it. It's something that they don't even see outside in the world. They applaud it and they feel like this is something they should uphold in the other countries too.
Can people sit together and see, is there a way forward where animals don't have to suffer and humans don't have to suffer? And I think the middle part, we are a country known for our middle part.
Some sort of mechanism where, similar to what is being practiced in Thimphu, where you take a cup and then you feed in a big bowl in a slightly secluded area where they are not, but certain cases this might not be practical because one dog you cannot take him to a secluded area. So in that case, if certain thing you just feed in a cup and thing, as long as that dog is not causing problem to anybody, that should be fine. Basically, no littering. So that was the message from the livestock and the Desupsla.
I tell my neighborhood saying, if you have leftover food, give me, because I feed every evening after I get home. Give it to me. I mix it with them, with my food, and then I give it to dogs in a proper way. And after that, I clean it up. So in that way we can educate people, right? So I think it's a long shot, but we can get there because nothing comes in a single night, right? So we will take some years to educate, but finally that's a good way to do it, right?
It's so sustainable, the lifestyle. You have these leftovers, right? You don't have to teach people about composting. You're like, oh, let's feed the animals that's around the house, right? And they do it, and then now you're asking them to start something new, something they've never done. It's a disruption. I don't think that is going to go down well.
So even from a sustainable point of view, I feel like all these dogs that we had were being fed by the families or the community around. They were feeding the dogs. If you go around Thimphu, maybe not now, but earlier we would see plates. Every building had a couple of plates. People would go, they would feed these dogs all the leftovers, and in a way it is a sustainable, natural way of doing things.
Ani sagonalo shacho bebe yumi sudija teta nebe genge ne tele lalu ani me chuku sa ko jab ani dibente kongi babe mo te ani rochigi jasnalu babe ani dazberu tu bebala te atala ro na sago na cham de misodi de jebra jaru tu shachora bebe chin ko chuku emisae te nebala nechibela te ko give te sinyebala te ane beuda mitaga sonoila.
In a way, we don't have any laws or even guidelines when it comes to ethical treatment of animals, right? And we didn't need it because we're a compassionate society, right? And now, with all of these rules, I'm thinking, oh my God, we must have a rule in place where it dictates to us what is and not the ethical treatment of animals, right? Because the indigenous way of life is all about peaceful coexistence with each other.
추다에 대우베 닐라파 미실로에 담마두마 템시베 다니미기 탑람 소소 레줌베 제 십셀베 디기베 배고프지베데 아네베 제우멜랑한 몰레베 버치.
I've become really superstitious, especially superstitious after becoming a mother, and I think that I believe in collective karma as well, and I think that if we harm, we're all sentient beings, right? If there's a lot of harm and hurt to sentient beings that are not human, I do believe that we will also face the consequence of it. So we need to be careful. This is going beyond science, but really looking at how we live as Bhutanese in Bhutan, and I'm hoping that we can be how we used to be, so we don't necessarily have to have rules in black and white telling us how we should live with animals and treat our dogs, because I think we did it well in the immediate past. It's not even 100 years ago, and I think we need to reconsider the harsh steps that we're taking at this point.
So I feel like feeding is really, really important to build a trust and, you know, have a good relationship with animals. In that way, we can all coexist and live in harmony. So we live in peace by living together. We make peace by living together, not by removing other sentient beings.
Denga chichudin gi ka khapnalo janchu sembege tuba miwanga darimbo chichugi covid lockdown gi kablo ya te rochi chachap tori nyarebe mashaba te shegozo di jingo se kanam shindu de subtsugi de konlo nim atara to jimbegi beten samyu